rider questions answered. As always, boys, if you have questions you want me to answer on here on the stream, like proper in the video, drop me them on Discord, become a member on YammieNoob.co. That's the best way to do it. And yeah, let's get into it. So, Daxa on Discord, one of our most prolific members, this young woman from Singapore, I believe, in that area of the world, really into racing and all that sort of stuff. Really cool user. She says, who are you rooting for in every racing championship / class that you watch? So we're starting off strong with racing questions. Okay, so let's start top of the castle, MotoGP. I am a diehard Fabio Quartararo fan. I've been a Yamaha fan for 10 plus years at this point. I was always a Valentino Rossi fan. I love Yamaha. Fabio's obviously not on a very competitive motorcycle nowadays, which is a little bit sad. He fought and won for the 2021 World Championship. I just think he has the most beautiful, silky, smooth riding style. I think he has so much talent, and he's a phenomenal rider to watch. But honestly, in MotoGP these days, I'm really rooting for Marc Marquez. I love the comeback story. I love how hard he's worked to get to where he is. He is undeniably, I think at this point, the greatest motorcycle racer of all time. He has an insane level of feel over the bike. He is very spectacular to watch. And I really think once he's on a factory Ducati, everyone else just might as well not turn up. I think it's going to be that kind of level of dominance. But we will see. So that's MotoGP. In Moto2, which I also keep up with that championship, I'm a huge Joe Roberts fan. Love seeing Joe do his thing. Really, really love seeing him on the bike. He looks really great, and he's the American in the category, so it's always great to see that too. In World Superbike, I'm a big fan of my boy Garrett Gerloff. Big shout out to him. We are actually buddies in real life. Maybe not buddies, maybe acquaintances. I don't know. Maybe if you want to take it that level, Garrett, we can talk about it. We text somewhat frequently. And Garrett did a couple videos with me out here in Texas. He is from Texas too. And I think Garrett has a ton of potential, a ton of energy. He just rides really well. And I think just now he's finding his extra aggression again and just got 2 podiums in this past weekend. Really, really beautiful to see. So I always root for Garrett. And those are kind of the main categories I watch. I watch GP, World Superbike, and Moto2. I don't really keep up with Moto3 too much. I watch highlight clips here and there, but that's kind of my rooting for every class. So with the racing out of the way, let's get back to the more normie-related questions. All right, Pengu on Discord asks, throughout your years of riding and many experiences, which of those would be your best and worst experiences? And if you could, would you do anything differently to help make those bad experiences better? Wow, this is a broad question. Okay, so I would say, let's kind of just get the bad out of the way. Certainly one of my worst experiences I've had was my crash in 2017. That was entirely my fault, and I collided with a car on the opposite side of the road. That was super gnarly, shouldn't have happened, totally my mistake. I learned from it, paid for it, and accepted the consequences like a man and moved on. But if I could go back, I would certainly avoid that accident. That did not need to happen that way. It was completely avoidable, and it's the type of mistakes that you make when you're young, stupid, and think that you're just the coolest thing to have ever existed ever. So that's certainly one of my worst experience on a motorcycle for sure. I would probably also categorize in a more like lighthearted way. Buying a scrambler and trying to learn how to ride off-road was a pretty hard experience. It was needlessly difficult. If I could go back, I would change that to just, I would like, instead of buying the Desert Sled, I would just buy like a WR250 and say like, buddy, you're going to have a way better time. Just get this motorcycle and love life. It's half the price. It's way better off-road, way lighter, and you're going to learn way more. That's what I would have done nowadays if I knew what I knew then. Or if I knew now what I... Oh my God, what am I trying to say? If I knew then what I know now. There we go. There we go, folks. And best experiences, man, I mean, there's just so many. Honestly, if we're just going to have some fun with this, one of my best experiences was owning a Turbo Hayabusa. How many people can honestly say that they owned and rode and didn't die on a Turbo Hayabusa? I had a 280 wheel horsepower turbocharged 1300cc motorcycle that I just had carte blanche to ride whenever I wanted. Certainly one of the best experiences of my life. Absolutely. So, moving on. Parrish75 on Discord has asked, for someone who lives in the Midwest, Nebraska more specifically, there aren't a lot of twisty roads. Is there an app or something that I can find some good roads or any other way to improve my skills so I don't stagnate? So this is a really tough one, and honestly, it was one of the reasons why I left the DFW area. I actually used to live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I'm moving back there in a couple of weeks just because of different circumstances. It's just be closer to family and that type of thing. But one of the reasons I left was because the riding was so bleak. There was just like no twisty roads. It was just all straight, no elevation changes. So I moved here to Austin, and there's hill country and some great routes. But it is very difficult if you're geographically constrained by the roads you're around to not have twisties and kind of challenging routes. I would say if you're able to kind of spread your wings a little bit from Nebraska. Nebraska maybe isn't too far from places in Idaho or Colorado or maybe something more west that has more mountainous areas, because basically what happens is like you find really good roads when you go and ride places that are have changes in elevation, right? You go and ride mountainous roads, you're going up a mountain or down a mountain. The easiest way to build those roads is to carve into and through the mountain, right? And so that's why the roads end up being twisty. Typically, the best way to find twisty roads is to find mountains and elevation changes. So that's what I would recommend. There's plenty of apps that help you find that. I would also say for a lot of people that live in places where there aren't a lot of twisty roads, they go do track days a lot, right? So in the DFW area, got a lot of track day guys because you don't have that many great roads to ride. So yeah. Catamac on Discord has asked, what is the best way to clean/maintain your riding gear? I'm concerned about repeated washer cycles ruining my expensive protective equipment. So there's two types of gear we can talk about. You have leather gear and textile gear. With leather gear, the best way to maintain that, typically you have an inner layer that you can zip out and wash. It's kind of like a mesh kind of threaded material. And then the outside layer of if it's just leather, you just wipe it down with a leather cleaner or any type of cleaner, really. A leather cleaner and appropriate cleaner is going to be good. A textile jacket, usually you can pop out the armor in those and just run them through in the wash every, 6 months or 3 months, whatever you want to do. I'll be honest, I barely wash my riding gear. I know that might sound crazy to you guys, but I just don't really feel the need to. I wash them maybe once every blue moon if we're being realistic. And one thing that I've had to do with my airbag system that can't be put in the wash cycle, you just got to literally wipe it down with a little soapy water or something. But I wouldn't be concerned about the repeated washer cycles. That's not going to ruin the gear, particularly if you put all the armor out and just wash it by itself. Just spinning it around a little bit, it's not going to do anything to it. It's certainly not going to damage or compromise the material. Helmets are really easy. You just pop out the cheek pads and stuff, wipe those down a little bit, freshen it up a little bit. But motorcycle gear is it's kind of like football equipment or soccer equipment. It's always used to be a little gross. It's like you can't ever get it perfectly clean. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. Shady Milkman on Discord asks, what are your thoughts on hub center steering? Why hasn't been adopted in racing, and do you think it will make it to consumer bikes? I don't really have too many thoughts on hub center steering. If anybody on the chat has that specific thought around hub-centered steering, maybe we can talk a little bit about it. But for racing, typically stuff doesn't get adopted because they have very specific rule sets, right? It's the reason you don't see electronically adjustable suspension in prototype racing or even in World Superbike. They have limitations on that. Is it possible that it would improve the racing or the motorcycle's capabilities to go faster? Maybe, sure, right? Possibly. But there's lots of rules in place to make stuff safer or to comply with regulations and to have more road relevancy, right? So I think that for hub center steering, because it isn't something that you see on bikes on the road that doesn't have road relevancy, you wouldn't want to see that on, like consumer grade motorcycles. So hope that answers the question. All right. Oh, Sniped on Discord asks, do you think that the MSF course should be mandatory / should we have a tiered licensing system like we have in Europe? And you guys are probably not going to like my opinion on this if you're the kind of freedom-loving, corn-fed American, but I absolutely think we should have a tiered licensing system in the United States. It has been proven to have better outcomes, and I come from I have an economics degree. I studied a lot of this stuff, and I'm really big on data. I'm really big on looking at outcomes of things, right? And when you look at the outcomes of riders who go through a tiered licensing system, you have fewer crashes, you have more sophisticated riders, you have riders that are going to do less silly stuff, right? I saw a video the other day, and it wasn't even a high-powered motorcycle. It was a guy on TikTok that decided to, or it was on Instagram, I think it got cross-posted from TikTok. He decided to race a Tesla at a stoplight, right? He's wearing shorts, like a long-sleeve t-shirt, a helmet with the crazy, like, little, like, fuzzy bunny ear thing. He goes to race the Tesla, and he accelerates first, second, third gear. He then tries to hold the throttle with his left hand open so that he can turn around and point to the Tesla for some reason. He then loses control because he's holding onto the throttle with his left hand and obviously putting pressure towards this point and pushing in the opposite direction, right? Maybe pulling the throttle and the bike is going left. And he causes himself to crash into a bush going like 70 miles an hour. You then look at the content this guy has on his page, and it's like all these ridiculously idiotic riding techniques. He's like planking on the motorcycle while it's going, and I'm like, well, no wonder this guy crashed, right? And that's the sort of thing where I'm like, look, I don't think everybody should ride motorcycles. Honestly, I really don't. And a tiered licensing system would prevent people who have these insane ideas to then, like, go out and buy a super powerful motorcycle, right? So I want to see better outcomes for riders, and I want to see more safety, absolutely, because we have, I think, like a squid epidemic here in the United States. It's insane. And like, not to sound crass about it, but like, you just don't see that in Europe. I've ridden in Europe. I've ridden with European riders. They just don't really do that. There are squids in Europe, I have to admit, but they're like moped squids. They're like Supermoto 125 squids. The consequences are much lower. So I absolutely think that we should have a tiered licensing system. Hey folks, I hope you're enjoying this Yammie Noob live stream clip. Remember, every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central, right here on YouTube, I do the streams. If you want a chance to participate in the live streams, head over to yammie-noob.co and become a member. You'll get access to our Discord server, automatic entries to win our giveaway motorcycles, and access to our newsletter as well. It's a great way to support the show. It's like a bike night that never ends over there. It's a lot of fun, and I'm on there all the time. Join as a member on yammie-noob.co and support the show. Noob James NX500 asks, after a phone mount and a throttle lock, what accessories would you put on a first adventure bike? Well, look at that, because your Papa Yam has an adventure bike now. Looking to daily my NX500 next year after the winter passes, keeping this thing for 2 or 3 more years. This is a great question. So I recently took delivery of a Touareg 660. That's my new bike. It's my new adventure bike. Having some fun with it. Videos coming out on that very shortly on the channel. Be on the lookout for that. Proper ADV dad stuff going on the channel. After a phone mount and a throttle lock on an adventure bike, I would do 3 additional things. I would get heated grips if I'm going to be riding it like kind of daily, year-round. Heated grips make a massive difference. Really, really nice to have. I would also get larger or more sophisticated hand guards for that wind. It doesn't take that much temperature for your hands to just feel awful when you ride. So as much as you can do to get the grip warmers and the hands sorted, then you'll have proper control on the bike. And that would also throw on, if your gas tank shape allows for it, some sort of tank bag or maybe a tail bag as well. That way you can, chuck in your wallet, maybe some supplies, maybe a fix-a-flat kit. It's just regular stuff that you would need if you're going to daily this thing all the time. Because getting a flat sucks on a bike. Especially if you don't have a way to just quickly patch it and fix it. So I would say invest in the skill sets to fix the flat and to get the fix-a-flat if you're going to be dailying it all the time, because you will absolutely get a flat tire. I've been riding for a long time. I've gotten like 4 or 5 different flat tires. 3 of them I was able to fix on the road, and 2 of them I had to call a tow truck. So yeah, I would say definitely look into that. Most Wild Wheat asks, your thoughts on Yamaha considering going V4 for MotoGP and what that will mean to us mere mortals. Another racing question that I get to subject you people to. So this is awesome news, right? Yamaha going for a V4 in MotoGP, I think, is absolutely the right move for them to continue to be competitive in the category. All the other motorcycles on the grid are V4s, and where is Yamaha losing it? On the straights. They simply do not have the right equipment to compete now that the motorcycles are highly tuned around the aerodynamics and the new Michelin rear tire and the ride height devices. You just cannot make enough grunt from an inline four, and it cannot be ridden in the way that a modern MotoGP bike needs to be ridden. It has to be a V4, and they came to that conclusion, right? Love the fact that they're going to have an additional satellite team. They're going to have 4 bikes on the grid. They're going to be able to collect way more data. They're getting 2 very experienced riders on the satellite bikes, which is awesome too. There's no newbies on the squad, so everybody's going to be able to collect great data. I have very big faith in Yamaha. I really think they're going to be up there fighting for podiums in a year or two again, especially with Fabio Quartararo. He's a fantastically talented rider, like I said. In terms of what it means to us mere mortals, I think it means jack shit, honestly. I don't think it means anything for us. And the reason I say that is because Honda's had a V4 in their RC213V for, 10 plus years now. And they've had a V4 in racing forever. It's never made its way into a road-oriented product other than like a VFR 750 from way back in the day. The flagship bikes that Honda offers are still inline 4. So I don't think it means anything for the street-going motorcycles, particularly because in 2027, MotoGP is going to downsize their engines to 850s, and so then you're going to have an 850cc V4. That's never going to be anything on the road, which is hilarious because Dorna wants more road relevancy for their series, which is just like they're not even road relevant, which is really silly. So yeah, that would be answer to that question. See if anybody here on chat said anything. Got quite a few things. Yeah, Danny says Yamaha will have to go V4. No choice if they want to compete. Yeah, 100%. I think everybody knows that. And yeah, like you can see, I mean, it's insane when Fabio gets a top 5 with that bike because I'm like, you have no business getting a top 5 with that thing. So Ducky79 on Instagram asks, what should I focus on my first year of riding motorcycles? Great question. So your first year of riding, what I would recommend for anybody to do is to just be on the bike as much as possible. You just want to build familiarity with the thing. You just want to ride it as much as possible, familiarize yourself with the motorcycle, get comfortable doing things with your motorcycle. Just do everything with it. Go run errands with it. Go take it to work. Go take it on trips. Go ride it around. Like, really understand this machine. The more time and experience you spend in the saddle, the better off you're going to be. And then the more miles you rack up, the more opportunities you'll have to do routine maintenance, right? You'll be able to pop off your wheels and go get some new tires. You'll be able to do some oil changes, clean and adjust your chain. You'll be able to bleed your brakes. And then you'll slowly build up those skill sets of just being like your average, everyday, kind of competent motorcyclist. So it all starts with doing as many miles as possible. So that's what I would recommend. Buy a bike and get a bike that allows you to do that because you're going to want to ride all the time. I see it a lot where like entry-level riders, man, they just like, they're chomping at the bit to ride 24/7, and that's great. Keep that enthusiasm and keep riding. Okay, Arjun1097 on Instagram. Is the future of motorcycling in jeopardy? This is a really big question. Guys on chat, let me know what you think about this. Is motorcycling in jeopardy in the future? I actually would be really curious to know. Why don't we do, we'll do a poll. We'll do a quick poll. I'm curious to see what you guys think. Because I think it's a yes and no, honestly. We just did a video that came out today about how rider demographics are changing a lot. And I think that, you know, when you consider the fact that the average motorcyclist is getting older and older and older, that kind of spells bad news for me personally. Not me personally like Yammie Noob, but I mean like for us as motorcyclists, right? I think that with the economy the way that it is, where people don't have as much disposable income to spend on things, motorcycling seen as really dangerous and not really worth it to a lot of young people. And they have alternatives that are fun to wield, things that are still more safe and more interesting. I think that, you know, when you look at a young kid who can go and get an electric bicycle and have fun and do some wheelies on that thing and just enjoy himself, versus getting a full-blown motorcycle that requires a special license endorsement and gear and all this stuff. Like, you really got to want to be a motorcyclist, right? The barrier to entry to a fun electric bicycle is nothing, right? I mean, they're expensive, but it's nothing. We have seen the bicycle market pretty much collapse in the last 2 years, so I'm not sure how that's doing. But yeah, I think that motorcycling is kind of in jeopardy. But it is always cool to see that people are still excited about motorcycling, right? Like, you still see enthusiasm for racing, you still see enthusiasm for two-wheel things, and like, it's objectively still just like a cool thing to do, I think. I think some people think it's like dangerous or not safe or bad or whatever, but like, objectively speaking, a motorcycle is always going to be cool. It's just like a rad thing to do, and you need a specialized set of skills to do it. But it seems like on chat, I am not correct. 68% of you are saying that no, it's not in jeopardy. Alex says that it's not in jeopardy. It's going to go underground. That's honestly a good point. I really think it's going to become a very niche enthusiast thing. I guess kind of like equestrianism, right? Like, when people were using horses for transport and then cars came around, people still kept riding horses, but it became much more of a hobby, right? People then rode horses as a hobby and farms and ranches and stuff. So I could see motorcycling becoming like that, you know? I did see somebody had a question here. Peyton asked, I know nothing of MotoGP or any professional racing. Where does Kawasaki stand overall? Great question. Thank you for the $10. Kawasaki had a very brief stint in MotoGP back when the rules were way different. I think in like 2006 and 7 and 8, something like that, in those years. And then they subsequently dropped out. Kawasaki then decided to focus all of their effort and energy in World Superbike, and they were very, very successful in World Superbike over the last 10 plus years with Jonathan Rea. He was a six-time World Superbike champion with Kawasaki. I think he racked up like over 100 wins. I mean, the ZX-10 was a very dominant package in World Superbike. So they did very, very well in that category. But they've never really done anything other than that. And some people think, oh, why doesn't Kawasaki come back to MotoGP? The bikes in MotoGP nowadays are so specialized and unique and crazy that to get started in MotoGP would be an enormous effort. And if you're already getting visibility for racing and World Superbike, not nearly as much as MotoGP, but there's not as much of an incentive. So that's kind of where things stand with them. But all right, boys. Yeah, those are the questions for the week. Remember, join on YammieNoob.co. You can always ask me any questions that you want. I'm always there hanging out. So make sure that you sign up and become a member. You also get access to win the giveaway bucks, which is pretty sweet. Keep watching Yammie Noob!